February 24th, 1976.
Again, this busy avenue of communication takes time out to salute mankind in his continual struggle up the ladder of evolution towards a perfect society. George, are you climbing up the ladder of evolution, buddy? Or have you ever really seriously looked at your feet? You know, a lot of people have not, really looked at their feet for a long time because it reminds them that they're not as high up the scale of evolution as other people. Do you know that there are people among us today who still have webbed feet? Oh, yes. You realize, of course, that means they're lower on the scale of evolution because at one time, well, there is a theory that man was evolved from a duck. Of course, that's not a popular view these days because, they say, well, how come man came from a duck? After all, man doesn't lay eggs. Well, they haven't watched television lately. Or seen a Stanley Kubrick movie lately. You can lay a lot of eggs. Very. Sorry. Is everything going okay in there? One night, if you want to know how it can get when you're in showbiz, one night I'm doing this comedy show, right? It's a television show, and I have my costume on. It was in costume, and I'm wearing a suit of armor, which we got from the museum. It's a real suit of armor. And, by the way, one thing I have to tell you about armor. Have any of you ever worn armor, real armor? You never wore it, huh? Well, if you ever wear real armor, you'll find, first of all, it's not as heavy as you think because it's distributed over your body, But it is. It clinks a little bit. You kind of get used to the clinking because some of those cheap suits that you've worn in the past tended to squeak, too. So you get used to that. And I'm sorry, but I had this suit of armor, and I'm wearing armor. The one thing you notice about armor is it has a funny smell. You never thought of armor smelling, did you? Well, it does. Well, see, first of all, it's rusted a little bit. No matter how you take care of your armor, you can be very, very fastidious as a person when you're wearing armor, and you can use gallons of 3-in-1 oil on it. But at the same time, it tends to smell like rusty metal, no matter what you do. And so when you're inside the armor, you smell this rusty. I'll tell you what it looks like. It feels like you're wearing a boiler on you. It tends to, and they get very hot. Now, you never think of armor as being hot. Very. There's a thing called the greenhouse effect. And I want to tell you, if you walk around in a suit of armor and the sun is shining, within 5 minutes you've lost 15, 20 pounds. Even if it's only your head that's melting. And a lot of people have heads that can, stand 15 or 20 pounds of suet melted out of it. But nevertheless, I'm wearing this armor, okay? This is what can happen in the control room. Wearing the armor. And I'm down there, I'm doing my funny thing. And there was an actress in the scene with me, too. We're playing this bit. And behind us is a rear screen projection. And we have a rear screen projection, and it was the streets of Paris was behind us. Don't ask me why. I don't want to explain the gag. It was a dumb joke. It didn't work. But I'm down there wearing the armor, and I look up in the control room, which was a great big glass enclosed thing that sort of hung halfway up to the wall, and I could see the director up there, and there were a couple of guys, engineers, sitting there at the control board, and my cameraman was walking around. We had two cameramen, actually, but only one camera. So the union required to have two cameramen. And so one cameraman would follow behind the other cameraman. He's carrying the guy's cup of coffee for when they have the coffee break. It was very important in that station, was coffee breaks. So I'm down there doing my bit, and I look up through my visor, I had an earphone, by the way, in my I had an earphone in my visor, in my helmet, because that way, they could make sure that I got the cues and all that. Like, we're going to black, Fred, that kind of stuff. And so I'm walking around, clanking down there, being funny, and I have this big mace. You know what is a mace? Right. It's a very interesting spice, by the way, for those who have never used mace. Do you remember him, Mace Brown? He was a great relief pitcher. So I'm walking around down there, and I hear in the earphones, I hear this sort of rustling thump in the earphones. I had a little thing stuck in my ear, and I look up in the control room out of my visor, and I see that the director has hit one of the engineers. Well, at that point, the other engineer jumped up. See, they stick together like glue. I'll tell you, nothing is worse than a bunch of engineers sticking together. One day, there's going to be an engineers riot, and then we all better watch out because they stick together. So this first engineer, he got hit in the mouth by the director. Oh, I might add, this director went on later to become a very famous director who directed a famous TV show that was based on a cartoon character. I'll give you a clue. A cartoon character. It was a famous television show, no longer on the air, but it is probably in reruns all throughout the country. The best thing that ever happened to him was this fight, because he got fired over the result of this fight. Went out to Hollywood, became famous, bought himself a 400-foot yacht, which proves to you that hitting guys in the mouth can't pay. However, he hit this engineer, and I'm looking up there, see, and I don't know what to do, and I hear there's a lot of yelling going on. I can hear it in the cans, through the monitor, and they're yelling and hollering, fist fighting back and forth, and I went on with my bit. What can I do? I'm out there on the stage, see, so I continue to go on with my bit, and I keep looking up there, and the fight went on, and we came to the time for the commercial. When I'm given a cue. My cue was, and I say, Sir Mordred shall return. We're supposed to go to the commercial. I say, Sir Mordred shall return. They ain't going to the commercial. They are now fighting on the floor. They have disappeared. Now, I don't want to go into character assassination at this time, friends, but I can only tell you that there's a lot that happens in showbiz that never gets into TV Guide. A hell of a lot. As a matter of fact, I saw a very famous television MC one time. He's on yet to this day. During the dog food commercial, jump up, run backstage, hit a stagehand, run back out, and sit down and continue to interview the people after the next break. Well, now I don't know why I'm telling you this, because I shouldn't really bring you backstage into the exciting, glamorous life of television and radio. But I can tell you one thing. I was party to this little incident one time. We're doing a television show in Hawaii. Right? We had $400 million worth of camera with us. This was the rarest camera at the time that money could buy. It was a color tape camera worth over $250,000. Okay? You know what kind of gear that is. It's a handheld type, the type you put on your shoulder. This thing, I'll tell you, you could put, you could, think of it, 10 Rolls Royces. That's what this thing was worth. 10 brand new ones. 10 Rolls Royces. You never think of it in those terms, did you? $250,000. And so the director says, I'll tell you what we're going to do. He says, we want to get a shot. Directors can be like this. He says, what we're going to do is get a shot of the waves coming in. He says, now, everybody gets a shot of the waves coming in, but we want a really interesting shot of the waves coming in. We want a shot that as if you were a grain of sand on the beach, that the waves are coming right in at you, see? Just rolling in. Beautiful, rolling in. And they're going to practically cover the whole camera, the whole scene, the waves rolling in from the vast Pacific. At that point, the cameraman says, I got you. I got you. This is right up my alley. I'm an artistic cameraman. So at that point, he walks down the beach, and I'm standing there waiting, very excited because I'm going to do my bit. And he goes into the water, at which point he sits down in the water. He's going to sit right on the edge of the water with the camera right at water level. You got it, friends? $250,000 worth of camera. Well, now, you already see the end, right? Well, you may see the end, friends, but I actually saw the end. I was there. I want to tell you. See, there's an old sailor's axiom. You know what the old sailor's axiom is about waves, right? Every seventh wave is Big Daddy. There's 6 little ones, and then along comes Big Daddy. Well, our cameraman went in at about number 2, I would say. He squatted down, and the director says, "Okay, roll it! Action! All right, bring on the waves!" At that point, the waves started to come in, see, because when you're really a dynamic director, the ocean doesn't do anything unless it gets its cue, see. So he hollers, "Bring on the waves!" And the waves started to roll in. 1. And he starts to shoot, see. 2. And at that point, the director says, "Get it a little lower! A little bit lower! You're a little high! I want it right at the water level!" And so then he lowers the camera. Another one. Well, all of a sudden, I see coming across the bay, wave number 7. Right. A defensive tackle of a wave. This wave just keeps going. And I thought, it was like watching a Greek tragedy. I thought he would jump up and run. I thought he could see it. I thought my director could see it, who's looking at the ocean through one of those little things they always look through, with the little needles and stuff in it. He doesn't see a damn thing, see. Well, all the while I'm expecting him to get up. The wave comes, and it just went absolutely without even making a sound. It just went, and he was gone. It was a fantastic sight. The wave just rolled right in, and the wave looked like it had a coaxial cable coming right out of it. You couldn't even see the cameraman. I'm forever blowing bubbles. This is WOR, friends, in New York. Right. Listen, do you want to hear other great moments? I actually did one time on the stage the thing that all actors are truly, secretly, totally afraid of having happen to them. What is it? You don't know what it is? Correct. Absolutely. That is right. The one great fear that all actors have, outside of, their agent turning into a real monster, which most of them do, but one of the great fears that all actors have is the old fly problem. Well, I don't want to bother you with this sickening story. It was really sickening. I tell you, not only sickening, but stupid. I was in this play, and it was a serious play. It was really serious. It was a very symbolic play. It was about the devil. It was about good and evil. You know how that kind of fun plays, see. And I was playing the devil. Actually, I played the devil, and it was a real great production. And a very famous actor who is now a star of a famous television series was in the scene with me, and he played the other guy. I played the devil. He played Dr. Faustus. Who was that actor? What do you mean, oh, come on? You mean you don't follow my career with bated breath? You would know that. Well, all right. Anyway, he's out on stage, see, and there was a great moment, a great scene where I am supposed to transform him from this old scientist. The play was about Dr. Faustus, see. It was, the whole the idea of Dr. Faustus. He signs with the devil, and the devil gives him this this charter, and he signs a contract. He sells his soul to the devil for this mess of pottage, right? By the way, there is a fairly decent restaurant on 48th Street where you can get good pottage these days. It's not cheap, but it's good. Nevertheless, I went up to him in the scene, and I said, I still remember the lines. He's sitting there. He's an ancient scientist, see? And he's wearing a rubber wig and all that stuff. He really looked ancient. Terrific scene. And I said, Dr. Faustus. And he looked up at me. Yes. What do you want with me? That was his line. Isn't that a great line? Yes. What do you want with me? He's talking to the devil, see? He doesn't know that, though. See, I'm a sneaky devil. So I say to him, Dr. Faustus, you just tried to commit suicide, and that was really stupid. Oh, no, I'm an evil person, and I have brought nothing but evil into the world. And by the way, every time I see this guy on his television show, I'd like to know whether he remembers doing this stupid scene with me. So at that point, I said to him, Dr. Faustus, you know what your problem is? You have never once in your life really swung. Ever. All of your life, you've dreamed of having fantastic scenes happening to you, and they never have. And so you spent your time in the laboratory working with test tubes. Right? No. I'm a dedicated scientist. Well, you may be a dedicated scientist, but I know a little about human nature. Dr. Faustus, I will only leave you with this thought. If you sign this contract with me, I will make you 22 years old. Instantly. Not only that, you will know all the things you know right now. And I will provide you with anything you want. All you have to do is sign this contract. Well, he did. Okay. At that point, we had a couple of change of scenes, and now I have arrived into his place of residence, and I'm about to change him from a 78-year-old man into a 22-year-old total swinger. And it was a great scene. How they did it was fantastic. I don't want to give you, tell you any of these trade secrets, but they did it. I'll tell you. This guy looked out at the audience. He turned to me. I says, turn to me. I must look you right in the eye. And at that point, I moved my hand. There was a big flash of light. And he turned and he looked into a mirror, which was non-existent because it was just a frame. It was like the audience was the mirror. He looked into the mirror, the light came on, and he was now 22. The crowd was... He really did change. It was a great high moment in the drama. And then I stood and looked over his shoulder into the mirror. I said, not bad. Not bad. 22 years old. I said, look at you. Look at that square jaw. We are ready for tonight's party. Well, every night the scene went off beautifully. And then one night, I turned to him and I said, you must face me. I have to look you right in the eye. At the count of 3, you will be transformed into a 22-year-old person. 1. And the lights got dim. 2. He turned and looked me right in the eye. 3. Boom. The bomb went off. The lights flashed. He turned. He faced the audience. And the audience broke into fantastic, wild gales of laughter. The first time we ever had a great laugh at that scene. And I couldn't figure out why they were laughing. He couldn't figure. I could see it was kind of a funny look in his face. He turned, and we started to talk, and then another character came up in the scene and whispered to me, hey, your fly's open. Can you imagine? The fly on my devil suit was open. Now, that was a real working devil. I tell you. That was a great moment. And every time I see this guy on his TV series, which is a big success, it's one of the top 10 shows. I always wonder if he remembers the night that the devil came on stage with his fly open. Who was that actor? Correct. Absolutely correct. And he was playing Dr. Faustus. Yeah. And you know who the guy that was the guy that told me was a great little guy I see on thousands of television commercials now. He's a little bald guy with a little mustache, and he is on, I'd say, 1 out of every 5 commercials. He is not the guy, by the way, that sells shake and bake. It's another guy. But yeah, and these moments, of course, the backstage moments in showbiz. Well, one night, I'll tell you, the worst moment I ever had in showbiz came one night when I was playing in a high school band, believe it or not. And I'm sitting in the back row there, and I don't know whether any of you ever played in a band. I would have to say this, that playing in a high school orchestra and band has to be one of the great educational moments. It really is. It's tremendous. I think it's more educational than almost anything you do in high school, in some ways. Incidentally, by the way, one of the reasons it's educational is because you really learn that some are more talented than others. You know, that's one of the terrible lessons in life that a lot of guys never really quite learn, and that is that we are not, in fact, created equal when it comes to talent. Have you agreed with that, or do you? I mean, it's one of those things you just have. Well, let's face it. I mean, if you think you can throw as hard as Seaver, I mean, you're in for a terrible comeuppance. I think there are 2 things where you learn about life really, really strongly. Not only strongly, but very, very deeply. One of them is when you try to play a musical instrument. Have you ever known somebody who could, without even raising a sweat, they could pick up a guitar? He goes, oh, you know, guitar, gee, that'd be an interesting thing to play. And 20 minutes later, they're playing it like Carlos Montoya. That drives you up the wall. Yeah. Oh, listen, I had a friend in the Army who could play anything that he picked up within 5 minutes. He never took a piano lesson in his life. And he could sit down and play the piano for hours, you know. And he didn't even play it by ear. He just played it because it was natural. It's not the same as playing by ear. But a musical instrument will teach you that some guys have got it and others haven't. And sports. I'll tell you, if there's anything that'll teach it to you more deeply, it's sports. In fact, we had a kid when I was in high school who went on, incidentally, to play professional basketball, who when I was in 7th grade with this guy, you know, you're playing in gym, you're a whole bunch of kids, you know, you all think of yourself as the same. We're having gym class. This guy could hit hook shots from 30 feet out without, he was about 3 feet tall at the time, you know, zip, whap, go right through, and everybody said, well, you know, it's just a passing phase. I'll tell you, he signed for $7 million by the time he was, you know, 18 years old. What was it? Talent. That is a word you do not hear discussed much. Talent. Now, what does talent mean? Well, talent means a guy can do something you can't do. And he does it naturally. It's called talent. Very, very discouraging thing. And when you run into talent, I mean, it's unmistakably talent. Have you ever been with somebody who's reportedly very talented and you discovered that they really aren't? How did he... Well, all right, what do you do at that point? See, how did he get where he got? Well, that's another talent. Now, that is the sneakiest talent of all, buddy. If you can get into a position that is required, talent is required to get in that position. If you get into that position without talent, you have the ultimate talent. Now, that's a talent you really ought to work on. And I have seen that talent, I'll tell you, so many times. The only one you never see it in is, except for one time I saw it, in sports. I will give you a brass figurine with bronze Oakley. You think you know about sports? I'll give you a real trivia question. What guy became a major leaguer, baseball player, played in the major leagues, because he married the daughter of the guy that owned the team? That is correct. And he became a member of the squad and traveled around, and he's in the record books as a major leaguer. Who was that? And what was the team? Boy, now there's a piece of trivia for you. and wherever he went, the team would, show up like they'd play, or they'd play out of town. They may be playing in Chicago. It was a major league ball team. They would play in Chicago, or they'd play in who knows, Pittsburgh or Kansas City or Detroit or wherever they're playing. Wherever he would go, this guy, everybody knew that he was on the team because he was the son-in-law of the team's owner. And he would actually go in to run for a guy. That's about all he ever did. He'd go in and he'd run for a guy once in a while, or he would pinch hit. And I think by the time he left the major leagues, after like 8 or 9 years playing, quote, playing in the majors, after about 8 or 9 years of playing in the majors, I think he had a batting average of 36. Something like, he once got a hit, I think. He got a hit ducking away from an inside fastball. Who was that? Yeah, well, that's one of those situations. But in sports, though, it rarely occurs. And as an ex-minor league ball player, I one time, in about the third or fourth week in the minors, I came to bat up against a guy who later became a fantastic pitcher. In fact, he was a fantastic pitcher then. But it was at that moment that I realized that I had never actually faced a pitcher. This guy went on to become a major league star of a fantastic dimension. In fact, he's constantly being talked about today in Hall of Fame. Brett. I remember coming to bat. This guy looked right down the slot, shook off one sign, wound up, and threw the first pitch. I saw his hand move. I heard a thump behind me, but I actually didn't see the ball. And at that point, there was a sick feeling deep in my gut, and I realized some guys played a game. Other guys got talent. Oh, who was it? I'll give you a clue. He was known as the Whip. This is WOR New York. Stay tuned for In Conversation.